Friends, Danish friends, and friends of humanity. Good day and good morning to you. I thank you for being here, and for our friends Damir John and DAKDIF, Yuzora John, to be able to enable us and raise our voices. I had written a speech for today, but after Mr. Bennett's conversation, I wonder how much of my speech do I have to change. So I will go on with my speech, but I'll try to respond to some of the questions you have raised. 15th of August 21 marks the Black Day, where a proxy armed extremist group takes power in Kabul. On this day, Afghans lost their hope for a future where a durable peace can determine their human security. They lost their aspirations for an independent Afghanistan, where they can exercise their individual social, political, and socio-economic rights. The leaders of the de facto government, or regime rather, were surprised with their own sudden arrival, not only bringing uncertainty, fear, and volatility in lives of people, but with absence of rule of law and lack of governance. Their arrival spirals many myths, such as Afghanistan is a safe country and at peace. It is the Afghan culture that does not let its women to get out of the house or get an education. There is no threat to global peace and security from the geography of Afghanistan. So let me debunk those myths for you. Afghanistan is not a safe country or at peace because the country does not have a formal government or a governance structure. There is an absolute lack of law, and this is something that Mr. Bennett mentioned, that they go by Sharia, and I wish that they did go according to Sharia, but they go according to their interpretation of Sharia. Also, this absence of law is a point of insecurity, uncertainty, and chaos, not only for the citizens of Afghanistan, but the region and the world at large. Now, as per the Doha Agreement, and one of the 4 points that Mr. Khalizad was extremely adamant to propagate and stand by, which was reduction in violence. Indeed, reduction in violence has been met because the terror group that waged wars and violence now has grabbed power forcefully. A country that 20 million of its citizens face food insecurity according to WFP, and 6 million of its people famine, cannot be in peace. In 2 years of Taliban de facto rule, absence of rule of law, extremism is on the rise with mushrooming of madrasas all over the country, training of suicide bombers, change of educational curricula, and above all, elimination of women. It is Afghan culture that women do not get education. Let's debunk that. The Constitution of Afghanistan in 1921 was empowering women way before its regional countries. Women were given a voice. For example, in the country where I live now, in Switzerland, women were given the right to vote in 1970. So one must assess the mentality of Taliban as to where the idea of elimination of women comes from, how such elimination empowered their cause to keep Afghanistan an ignorant society, and above all, the consequences this has for development of Afghan society and its impact in the region and globally. The author of the book, Sex and the World Peace, makes a fundamental point that the states which do go to war over oil and scarce resources will do so in societies that have norms of gender inequality. Therefore, the foreseen fault line between civilization would be between states that treat women equally and those states that have their norms embedded in gender inequality. This gender inequality furthers the human insecurity in Afghanistan. I must also highlight that peace is not possible when the leadership of Taliban announced amnesty, but in effect, disappearances, arbitrary arrests are taking place, and Afghans operate in an environment of fear and suppression. So what can be done? Afghanistan's past 2 years' nightmare must be put to an end for regional and global stability, as well as human security of its citizens. Taliban are not a political force. They refused to be one during the peace process, rejecting a political settlement through a peace process, but rather chose to show their real face of terror by forcefully taking over. The geopolitics of the country dictates that Afghanistan has become a litmus test for regional and global stakeholders to prove their capacity for cooperation in order to obtain peace and security. Therefore, we must think out of the box in finding solutions for Afghanistan. The international community has a choice between engagement, legitimization of a radical proxy group, versus building a mechanism for national and international consensus. Who should be present at national discourse? Not only the Taliban and the Mujahideen or the warlords, but a third front representing the true voices of Afghanistan. Third front can succeed when it has space for dialogue with all players on issues such as national election, transitional justice, disarmament, equal rights for all citizens of a neutral Afghanistan, whereby regional and global stakeholders can reach a consensus for the stability, security, and economic growth in the region. Afghanistan as a sovereign nation can exist as a neutral state. Therefore, I recommend the following. Engagement with Taliban does not entail accepting their rule. Instead, discovering and defining mechanisms that put in place rather a discussion based on the rights of Afghan citizens. That is our political rights, which includes election, economic rights that include our economic development and growth to connect the region, and our social rights. For example, Mr. Bennett mentioned that they did away with the 2004 constitution. The Taliban say that they're implementing the Zahir Shah constitution. If they're implementing the Zahir Shah constitution, there is no space for democracy. Why? Because they don't allow political activities to be there or political parties to exist. Our national interest, regional and global security demand that Afghanistan is declared a neutral state, whereby regional and global political stakeholders in Afghanistan reach a consensus under the umbrella of UN on its neutral entity. This neutral status can be successful when at national level the political future of Afghanistan is shaped in creating a political system that can conduct elections, promote equal rights, food security, and economic growth. Afghanistan national interest, regional and international security is directly linked with debunking the jihad narrative that was introduced during the Cold War. it is the same jihad narrative that continues to date, radicalizing Afghan children, especially since the Taliban arrival 2 years ago. The recruitment of Afghan youth for unknown wars are at its peak. Afghanistan national interest is linked to global human security, that is access to education, healthcare, equal rights of its citizens, and food security, as I mentioned. Current poverty and the rule of the Taliban is the biggest danger for Afghanistan and the region because it perpetuates conditions for radicalization, exploitation of vulnerable groups, especially women and children. Therefore, a durable peace in Afghanistan can be guaranteed when two parallel processes, that is, one at national and the other at international level, takes place simultaneously in reaching a consensus on political future of the country and thus the region's stability and global security. Thank you very much.